Hello and welcome to a very special 12th episode. So we've got 1 year now of My CyberWhy. This is the podcast where we talk to people around the world about the different ways that they're helping to protect people from the cyber criminals. We hear a lot of talk and a lot of focus on the bad guys and the cyber gangs, but we don't always shine a light on the defenders and the warriors. So we're doing that here in this series, and today we're specifically doing that with Limor Kessem, who is the Global Executive Security Advisor for IBM, and is coming to us. You're in Tel Aviv, right? Is that right, or a different?
Yes. Well, it's a bit north of Tel Aviv, but in a city called Herzliya, but it's very much in the same district.
Oh yes, it's beautiful. Is it beautiful weather there today?
It is. It's 32 degrees Celsius, which is pretty high on the Fahrenheit scale.
Okay, and for people watching, it is now we're going through yet another big cold snap here in the Northeast. They say I'm in the Northeast of the U.S., and they say that we're going to get some of the record-breaking temperatures. So I'm a little bit jealous of the gorgeous weather you've got there in Herzliya.
You're always welcome here.
Yeah, thank you. So, Limor, who are you? As you know, we do the who, what, why.
Right. So, wow, that's a good question. Of course, there are so many things to say. I'll try to keep it to, historically being the person who drove my family crazy by doing really unexpected things, by moving abroad for many, many years, and doing things my way throughout, my life and later my career. And I'm the person who will be a daredevil and do, more extreme sports. I love driving, so I go to different driving courses like rally driving and race driving. I used to love, stand-up paddleboarding in the sea and doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm a very big fan of mixed martial arts. And all these things always seemed kind of peculiar to my family. And, finally, they have some peace from me because almost 2 years ago, I became a mom. And so that has been the main event in our home ever since. And it has kept me a lot calmer. I couldn't do all the same sports anymore. I had to focus on taking care of a baby all of a sudden, and that was my new extreme sport, which is, I must say, more extreme than anything anybody's ever done. And so that's who I am now, and of course, that kind of brings us back to also another big part of me is my career, my love, and my passion for cybersecurity.
Yes, and being a cyber warrior, I mean, you are extreme fighter on the front lines. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what is it you do at IBM as a Global Executive Security Advisor?
So my role has really evolved over the years, also with IBM. And I started as security evangelist and ended up being also security advisor as time went on. Nowadays, I actually lead a special process that has to do with security research. So it is a GRC process. It's there to mitigate business risk at the end of the day. And it takes all the different research from IBMers. So it could be anything, but it has to be security research, right? And we review it. We have a process that's there to review it. Is it accurate? Are there questions that come to mind? And, what else? Who else needs to have their eyes on this? What department or what external parties? Maybe it's a disclosure. Maybe it's a vulnerability issue. Maybe we need to let other people know, like affected parties, affected companies. So there's a lot that goes into that process. And I've been leading it for the past 3 years. So that's what I've been doing. And just on the verge of my next evolution, just any day now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And full disclosure for everybody listening, this is actually a process that Limor and I, back when I was at IBM, that we had developed together.
Great.
So, yeah.
Well, I have to say, Diana did the lion's share of this development. Like, I came into it when it was pretty good already running, and I took it and continued to run with it as time went on. And of course, as any process, it's a living thing, and it moves and it changes and it adapts itself to the people who use it. So, I don't think I did as much of the building as much as the later on parts.
It was always a team effort. We had two other colleagues not on, Chris Poulin and Pete Aller, who thankfully worked with us. A lot of times people don't understand why you need to have a community around research publication. And I was wondering if you wanted to touch on either what can go wrong or what in a process like this security research really makes it go right.
So, when you do research, you're addressing your community, and you already have one right inside the organization where you work. And before you release that research, how about having a sounding board of like, what are the questions that came to their mind that were evident and let's say weren't addressed, and you could add some information about that. Or if they had somebody who was a subject matter expert on the subject and had something new, or maybe they also did some parallel research or something else, or a different part of it where it could be combined. There's so much to do in that sense of first coming to your community and asking for what we call a peer review, and building that into the final product. Of course, we don't have a ton of time to do this, so we try to do it in a certain time constraint. But we do want to give it the best shot we can within a certain, a reasonable amount of time. And things that could go wrong is, for example, an employee that wants to talk about a flaw that they found in a different vendor's software or product, and they believe that it's okay to go ahead and publish it as is. Well, it's not, because IBM does follow responsible disclosure procedures. And we have, we're contributors to community on so many levels that we would not do that. Or, for example, releasing information about vulnerability and also releasing exploit code without people having any way to patch it, without allowing for the time to pass for the vendor to patch it. So all these things have to be governed and controlled through a process like this. And to say to an author, okay, this is wonderful, you found this vulnerability, we've reviewed it, we've vetted it, it's great. We have to give that vendor at least 90 days for them to respond and to be able to issue a patch, or, we have to give them their due time to do this, because it's our policy. So these are just, very small, light examples. Of course, these projects run the gamut of just everything from artificial intelligence. There was a malware built with AI that went to Black Hat last year. So that was super interesting. That went through the vetting process. Open source code, tools that were released to the security community, that went through the same process. And it could be, everyday blogs about malware and about intelligence findings and about everything you could think of that would come from research teams in security.
Yeah, and the blogs about malware, you're one of have been traditionally one of the most prolific authors on. You take the malware research, you work with the teams, and then you translate information about the TTPs, the tactics and techniques, and the changes in the cyber criminal gangs. What got you, and your writing is just incredibly passionate. It's so clear that this really matters to you. Why? Why are you so charged? What is it that really spurs you every morning when you get up?
That is my CyberWhy.
Yeah, what's your CyberWhy exactly?
So my CyberWhy is that I believe that in cybersecurity, a lot of the people I work with and I've met through the years don't consider it to just be a job. It is also a calling. It's like, I liken it to people who work in law enforcement, people who are firefighters, people who are out there to help others. And I see a lot of that in cybersecurity as well, that we are out there to make the world a better place for other people, whether it doesn't matter, it's for other organizations that end up serving people, it's for banks, it's for the general population, it doesn't matter. It's more than just a job. It's definitely a calling, and I do have a tremendous passion for it. And this why in cybersecurity has been not only a motivating part of my career, it's been an invigorating part of it, where it's just, I'm never tired of it. I'm never, fed up of it. I always want to do more, and there's so much more to do and so much more to see and to find new paths in. So if, I started in threat intelligence and now I'm more on the GRC side, and then my next passion is the incident response side, there's always something so amazing and interesting to do in this domain.
Yes, and having been lucky enough to work with you as a colleague, I know that energy really is there. You would say things like, I've got to check out on a Saturday, right, when we were doing some big blog on something very time sensitive. You'd say, I got to check out to go to do something for 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon. I'll be back at 8 p.m. Saturday night. It's just amazing. It seemed like you work around the clock.
Right. Sometimes, yeah, definitely. It's like, especially before having a child, that was my child. That was my marriage. That was everything for me. And because it has really grabbed my heart. And I definitely would have done the same today if I had the same amount of time. But now I divide my time also for my child, and between cybersecurity and that.
Any parallels between all the extreme sports and what you're doing in cyber?
Yes. I could look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and say, it's always having to find a new path, a new solution. There are so many different things an adversary can do, and you have to figure them out before it starts and have a plan for whichever path they take. So I do see a similarity there. But I've spoken with other people, parents in cybersecurity. We all agree that there's a very big aspect of incident response. There's all sorts of stuff that happens.
Yeah.
Starting from when you give birth and all the way till, I guess, adulthood, where there's so many things that can happen. You have to have your incident, like your run books almost, and speak to other parents and find out your threat intelligence. So there's a lot of that there. But we all agree that nothing can prepare you for it, and that it's more extreme than anything you've ever thought it would be.
Interesting. So cyber's a little bit extreme, but you're finding the parallels between the cyber and response and being a mom, being the strongest. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
And the burn books. Yeah. Okay. So how would you like people to get involved? Given for all that you've learned, especially looking at the shifts in cybercrime gang activity, and now looking at the criticality of being prepared for incident response, what would you like people to know? How would you like people to get more involved?
So it depends which people, but if we're speaking about security professionals, then I definitely think, that as time progressed, and, in the beginning, maybe 10 years ago, when things were starting to really move in the cybersecurity arena, and with cyber criminals becoming a lot more professional than they used to be, and now we're dealing with organized crime groups, and we're up against a much more sophisticated adversary, and of course, nation state attacks. Everything has just been boiling everywhere. We used to really look at threat intelligence as a solution. We forgot that perimeter defense was a thing already. It's a thing of the past. We're looking now at defense in depth. How do we do it correctly, and so on. I think that the most important thing for me to say to people nowadays is focus on those basic things that we as a community keep failing at. Whether it be that patch that caused the havoc across the entire globe because of some just the patch that totally should have been patched by most organizations, and these things keep coming back, or, if it's a cloud misconfiguration, that keeps coming back in very big incidents. The small things, those changing the password from admin or whatever, or just changing default settings, basic things that really could lead to incidents. I think that should be something we should be focusing on, along with that preparedness, but not just security team, but really sweep that through the entire organization, that everybody knows a little bit of what they have to do and who they have to go to, and make really sure of it, no matter how big or small the organization is. And I think incident response is just going to be the thing nowadays, because preventing attacks, preventing an adversary from getting into systems that we want to allow people to get into is becoming futile. eventually they're going to be able to find one little crackle and get in. It's very possible. Knowing how to detect it on time and contain it on time can really save the day. So I think that, find out more about incident response, about the phases, devise a plan if you don't have one, find time and convince your management to allow the team to exercise it, to constantly drill it, and for it to become something that they do regularly.
And one last bonus question. If so you have a 2-year-old child. If your child came to you in a few years and said, "Mom, I want to go into cyber. I want to be like you," what would you say and why?
I would encourage it. I'm hoping that she would want to do that. I do find that it's just so interesting. There's so many facets to it. I mean, you could be a programmer if you chose to in cybersecurity and write security software, security solutions. And you can do like what I used to do and be a security evangelist and just get on stages and speak to different audiences in this realm. Or you could be working in the weeds. You could be a responder. You could be so many different things. I think it's fascinating. I totally encourage her to enjoy this field as well.
All right, so maybe raising the next generation too of cyber warriors. Thank you so much, Limor. Thank you for your time, really, and thank you for all the work that you do and getting the word out about how to keep people safe.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next year on My CyberWhy.